Anant Sharma, Morgan McKay, and Tyler Gotham on the stage. Give them a big round of applause.
Where's my clicker? Where? This one. Oh, and how do I move between slides? Oh, this button right here, move between slides. Okay. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today and listen to our talk. I know it's 3 o'clock. The caffeine crash is probably set in by now, but you're powering through to come listen to us. We certainly appreciate that. Look forward to getting your feedback and even what you may have done differently throughout this.
Green button.
So that's us on the screen. My name is Tyler Gothman, and I lead a team of technologists here in T-Mobile Engineering with a mission of collecting diagnostics data sets so that we can produce big data analytics on the T-Mobile network user experience. And the 3 problems we're really trying to help solve here at T-Mobile, driving our geospatial coverage strategy, accelerating and validating 5G technologies, and trying to understand the latency and data connection experience from the device perspective. Snowflake was pretty gracious about letting 3 of us present and get some FaceTime with you guys. So let me introduce Anant Sharma. He's our senior data architect and the mastermind behind this migration effort. We also have Morgan McKay. She leads the data engineering team, and she did a lot in terms of helping us refine our cloud platform strategy. So for the agenda, I'm going to just finish introducing the problem statement, walk you all through guidance into our various legacy data lake and its corresponding challenges. I'll then pass it on to Anant, who will connect the dots in terms of our platform evolution into Snowflake. And then we'll hang it over to Morgan. She'll get into the strategy aspect of all of this, as well as just the outcome in terms of the quantifiable results, and even just the intangible benefits that we didn't necessarily expect, but nonetheless realized. All right, so I think the title and the agenda probably give it away in terms of what this talk is about. But if it doesn't, I hope this slide does. This is about the never-ending and infinite game of continually enhancing and optimizing your cloud platforms. And for us at T-Mobile, it really was this 3rd point here regarding minimization and avoidance of cloud costs that was our key motivation. A few years ago, back in time, we had our own private on-premise Hadoop environment that served as our analytics platform. But what inevitably happened is, and I'm sure you guys all know this, competing Spark jobs and analytics workloads overwhelmed our very limited compute resources. And so to scale, we exposed our AWS services to our team of internal analysts so they could run their jobs all the way in the cloud. But with predictable results, before we knew it, we'd opened the floodgates and cloud costs had just run amok. So that's the context for how we kicked this off. So throughout this talk, you'll see we started in a data lake, but with Snowflake, actually shifted back to a more classic data warehouse that still offered some key functionalities from each platform architecture. So let's dig into the various challenges with our legacy data lake. And the first was just coming to terms with our unnecessarily high storage costs driven by data duplication across S3 buckets. And for this, I'm not even really considering the different layers here between your raw semi-structured data and your process flattened enriched data sets. I think that's obviously typical of most ETL designs, but rather it really was the downstream sharing with other T-Mobile business units, wherein we took files, dumped them into these team-specific S3 directories, and did that for secure file transfer. So anyways, maintainability, that was another huge pain point for us. We had our own on-prem environment of actual server hardware that required constant upkeep and servicing. But I would argue more than that, just on the software side of things in the cloud. Data scientists and data analysts had to have their EMR clusters have the right bootstrap configurations. EC2 instances needed to be properly patched constantly, et cetera, and so forth. So thankfully, a lot of that complexity has been abstracted away in Snowflake. The compute costs. I already mentioned that was kind of the context where it kicked off this entire effort. And Anant will get into more of the details here regarding some of the performance differences between AWS EMR clusters against Snowflake warehouses. But suffice to say, we really put a lot of effort tracking our EMR usage at an individual and granular level. And just to kind of underscore this point, a common situation we'd encounter is end of the week, a data scientist fires up their EMR cluster, but of course, leaves it running continuously throughout the weekend, doesn't disable it, so obviously not ideal in terms of needlessly taking on costs that way. In security, we are in the business of constantly rotating sensitive AWS IAM keys. So if we didn't rotate them fast enough and on time, risking outage to downstream dependent users. Life's much better now managing users in Snowflake Azure Active Directory groups and not even having to worry about how they're authenticating, which is just single sign-on right in the browser. And this last pain point here, regarding a lack of efficient and seamless data sharing, this is the hill I personally will die on. I think it's the biggest problem Snowflake helped us solve, probably even the wider industry. Like, let's just pause for a second. Imagine you're an operations analyst on one of these T-Mobile teams we're already sharing with, and you have some banal, quick question you expect a fast answer to. Well, these were Parquet files we were just dumping in redundantly into these directories. And so you're having probably little to no choice, but you're writing PySpark scripts, you're dealing in terms of data frames. There simply wasn't this elegant, quick SQL interface to get these fast ad hoc queries. We talked about maybe leveraging Athena tables for that, or exposing access to our Impala SQL query engine, which you guys can see right here in our on-prem HDFS environment. But in the end, none of that was suitable, worthwhile, all far too cumbersome. So these were the key challenges for us that we had to deal with our data lake, which I hope resonated with some of you guys who have similar dependencies in AWS. So Anant, I'm going to hand over to you to dig into the technical details of how we leverage Snowflake to mitigate these various pain points.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler, for introducing our legacy system with us. So the way I want to elaborate from here, but before, let me introduce myself. My name is Anant. I'm a senior data architect in Procogia, which is a data consulting company who helps organization in their data journey. So the way I want to elaborate from here is, I want to address all the pain points mentioned by Tyler. I want to segregate those into evolution and the outcome. In my presentation, I'll be talking about the evolution part, which will focus on the storage, compute, and maintainability. And by the end of it, we'll be able to see a new data platform arrive from it. So starting with the evolution part. First and foremost was the storage simplification. So if you plan to streamline this process a bit so that we can have one single source of truth as a data lake. On top of it, we have a data integration layer, which is hosting a more processed, enriched, flattened data. And then on top of it, we have our secure views, which is basically just logical representation of the underlying data set, so that every time there is a customer requirement, we don't have to create different sets of copies, physical copies, and thus reducing the data redundancy. With secure views, we are also able to fine-grain the access control. We are also able to dynamically apply filtering and all those filtering logical conditions so that we don't have to expose the DDLs to the customers for which we don't want to do that. And Snowflake also has a feature of role-based access control. So using RBAC, we can apply dynamic masking policy if we want to hide certain PII information with certain sets of customers. All these points helped us to reduce storage overhead and thus helped us to save a lot of cost in our environment. Moving on to the compute part now. So again, if you see on the left-hand side, we were using EMR and Spark clusters, which was a little bit difficult to maintain overall, but then we migrated to Snowpark. Initially, we were a little skeptical that we might have to learn a new programming language or we have to rewrite all our ETL pipelines and operations, but it was very surprising to us that the similarities between the existing Spark jobs and Snowpark was 90 to 95% similar in syntax. So it made the whole migration a bit easy lift and shift for us. Then again, onto the migration part, overall time it was taking before on the EMR and Spark job was 6 hours, which has been reduced to 2 hours now. And I give the credit to Snowflake for that because probably it's because of their high concurrent query efficiency. Therein, if I'm not wrong, using a medium warehouse, you can execute 16 queries in parallel, which is again a very cool feature to have if you're planning to do any kind of migration. One thing I wanted to call out personally, which I like the most and which is quite famous among our analysts also, that now the analyst can focus more on the development part instead of worrying about how many nodes they should use and what should be their EMR cluster size. Okay, last but not the least about the maintenance part. So honestly, there are so many things which I can talk about in terms of maintenance, but let me start with the comprehensive monitoring. So Snowflake provides structured logs to understand your user's pattern, your usage, so it comes quite handy in that aspect. Snowflake also has seamless integration with a lot of third-party tools, like you can have Python connectors, you can have Power BI connectors, you can have Spark connectors, which comes quite handy. Let's talk about the collaborative development environment. So not only you can create code versioning, but you can also share your worksheets among your different analyst groups and different team members. And last but not the least, if you guys remember, in 2021, we had this major log4j issue. So what we did was we were manually scanning through our systems, we were upgrading, we were putting patches, but now all the security things will be taken care by the Snowflake team, so we don't have to worry about all those security measures. We can solely focus on the development part instead of worrying about the underlying infrastructure. With that being said, I think we can piece all these components together now to see a more holistical diagram of our new data platform. So here I give you our next-gen data platform. Again, so many components to talk about here, but let me start from the extreme left. We are using Kafka connectors and Snowpipe to stream our data directly to land into our first data point of inception, which in our case is semi-structured data layer, which is hosting basically our variant tables. Then we are running Snowpark pipelines, and we are storing that data into our structured layer, which is our data integration layer. We still have some legacy system, which is still writing to some of the S3 buckets. We haven't abandoned those. We are using external tables, and we are sourcing that data through Snowpark and parking that data into us, again, data integration layer. For some of the near real-time use cases, we are using dynamic tables. So dynamic tables is basically a more zero ETL approach provided by Snowflake. Instead of worrying about and maintaining your ETL pipelines, you can simply write SQL languages and you can have more near real-time experience if there is a requirement from one of your customers. And using all these methodologies and secure views, we are sharing that data through our customers, through APIs, through data share, through database replication, and the list goes on. Okay, so with this, I rest my case. I'll pass the torch to Morgan. She'll be talking about the outcome of this evolution. So over to you, Morgan.
Awesome. Thanks, Nat. Honestly, moving 2.5 petabytes of data onto Snowflake is a big accomplishment, and the way that you designed the data platform makes the next part of this talk really easy. So this brings me to my first question to you all. Who here has ever done something like this? Who here has moved data from one platform to another? See a show of hands. Okay, nice. Quite a few of you guys, actually. So you guys know then that when we do this, we have to design a data sharing framework and an access management process, which is what my talk will be about. Over the next 6 minutes, I'm going to go over how Snowflake has made our data sharing process seamless and how it's improved our access management by incorporating Azure AD groups. So, for my first topic, data sharing, on the right, you can see all of the different solutions that we offer for our customers. And a lot of these are going to seem similar because they're exactly what Anant just talked about, but I'm going to share with you what type of customer we provide those solutions for. So we've got the custom analytics, the domain-based AD groups, the data share, and the database replication. I'll spend a minute on each one. Cool. So custom analytics. This is something that our team really has always offered, even before we were on Snowflake. And it can be things like a Power BI dashboard or a custom analytics report that we provide to a customer. And it's really meant for those non-technical customers, as well as those common questions. Like for us at T-Mobile, what does the coverage map look like? That would be a great one for this project here. And when I say non-technical, back in the day, AWS days, this really meant knowing PySpark, having your own data platform, and we'd have to duplicate the data to them. Now that we're on Snowflake, the only thing the customer has to know is SQL, which has opened up, well, it has really taken a bunch of our customers who were previously waiting for a custom analytics report, and we've been able to move them to one of our following three options: either domain-based AD groups, data sharing, and database replication. And they require a data platform. So for these guys, we're going to give them access to a domain-based AD group. And what this is the Azure Active Directory. We've integrated that with Snowflake so that we can control access to our data. And we group these groups around similar events. So there are often events that are analyzed together. And I have a quick example to explain what I mean by that. So on the left of the Venn diagram, we have the telecom domain group. And if you're added to this group, you'll be able to see call latency and call drop events. And for this example, let's say that they're often analyzed together. So when we add a customer to this group, they'll automatically be able to see both of these events. This makes it easy for us to onboard customers very quickly, and it also reduces the amount of groups that we have to manage. It also prevents these customers from seeing data that's not relevant to their use case. So they won't be seeing gaming data, for example. So we've got those customers who don't have a data platform, and they're going to be accessing the data through our Snowflake warehouse using our resources. But some of our analysts and customers have a Snowflake account themselves. And this is where it gets awesome, because we can use a data share. Back in the day, again, we used to do data replication in this situation. And when we have 2.5 petabytes of data, replicating that gets very costly very quickly. So with the data share, because there's no longer any data replication, we've been able to cut costs drastically. And we do sometimes replicate data, though, only when their Snowflake is in another cloud environment. In this situation, we do a database replication between the cloud. And this is another native Snowflake feature that allows us to keep all of the data within Snowflake, so there's no data leakage and no data transfer costs. So our data sharing strategy has completely changed since moving to Snowflake. And it's been like going from a high school newsletter to a nationwide broadcast in terms of getting information out. But we've seen how we share data. Let's talk a little bit about how we protect it. So in AWS, we were really using access keys, which is a fancy way to say password, right? So we were sharing this password with our customers. We'd have to rotate it. We'd have to make sure that they kept it safe. We didn't really know who had what. Well, we had to track who had what. We knew who had it. But in Snowflake, we can see exactly the names who are added to those groups. So if we go back to the telecom example, I can now click into that user group and see that Tyler, Anant, and Morgan are added to that group, and they have access to call latency data and drop call events. This has given us a lot more visibility into our data access, as well as we can now see logs on what those customers are querying, how they're using the data. So it's really given us more visibility and more precision in how our data is being used. So before, our customers, they had to have the technical skills to access our data. They had to have a data platform, and we had to replicate the data for them. So when it all came down to it, we were really just supporting 2 customers. Now that we're on Snowflake, we've been able to onboard and easily support over 140 new customers. So this has been huge for our team. And it's really been able to allow the company to drive new insights by accessing data that they didn't even know existed before. And to summarize what Tyler and Anant talked about, before we had some inefficient processes. Our ETLs are now 50% faster than they were before after moving to Snowpark. This went from 6 hours to 2 hours for our average one, for our normal ETL. Savings have dropped 40%. Well, savings are now 40%. And we've scaled our customers to over 140. And so as you can see, moving to Snowflake has really helped our team. And I want to thank you guys for listening. And I hope that when you guys get home from this conference, you guys check out these Snowflake features and see if they can save your team money and help you drive impact. Thank you all and have a really great rest of your conference.
Yeah, thank you.